The call came in at exactly 2:13 a.m. I remember the time because I glanced at the clock on the studio wall, just as the red light on my switchboard lit up. The voice on the other end was calm, almost soothing, but what it said made my blood run cold. "I've been waiting for someone to hear my story," the caller began. "I need to confess, to cleanse my soul. And you're the one who'll listen." I felt a shiver run down my spine as I leaned closer to the microphone, my fingers hovering over the record button. It all started 6 months ago when I took over the midnight slot on WZRD, the local late-night radio station. Hosting Midnight Confessions was a dream come true for me. I loved the eerie tranquility of the night, the way the darkness brought out the deepest secrets in people. My show was a mix of music, call-ins, and storytelling, and I quickly gained a loyal following. Most nights, the calls were tame, people confessing their minor sins, like cheating on a diet or skipping work. Occasionally, I'd get a juicy secret about an office romance or a hidden stash of money. But nothing could have prepared me for the call I received that night. "Midnight Confessions, you're on the air," I said, my voice steady and professional. "Hello, DJ," the caller said. The voice was deep, masculine, and strangely hypnotic. "Do you believe in the power of confession?" "I think it can be very cathartic," I replied, curious where this was going. "What's on your mind tonight?" There was a pause, just long enough to make me wonder if the caller had hung up. Then he spoke again, his tone even and measured. "I've done things, DJ. Things that would make most people shudder. I need to tell someone, and you're the one who's going to listen." I leaned forward, my heart racing. This was exactly the kind of call that could make my show famous, but it also sent a chill down my spine. "I'm here to listen," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Go ahead." "I killed someone," the caller said, his voice flat and emotionless. "And I need to tell you how and why." Rewind to the beginning of that fateful night. The studio was quiet, the dim light from my desk lamp casting long shadows on the walls. I was playing one of my favorite tracks, a haunting melody that seemed to echo the loneliness of the late hour. The phone lines had been unusually quiet, and I was starting to feel a bit restless. I checked my email and social media, responding to a few messages from listeners. Most were the usual fare, song requests, compliments on the show, or suggestions for topics. But one email caught my eye. It was from an anonymous sender, the subject line simply reading, "Confession." The body of the email was short but unsettling. "I have a story to tell you. I'll call tonight. Listen carefully." I tried to shrug it off as a prank, but something about it felt ominous. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease as I went through the motions of my show, playing songs and reading listener messages. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the phone rang. I hit the answer button, my heart pounding. "Midnight Confessions, you're on the air," I said. "Hello, DJ," the caller began. "Do you believe in the power of confession?" The voice was deep and unsettling, and I felt a prickle of fear. "I think it can be very cathartic," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's on your mind tonight?" The caller's next words sent a chill down my spine. "I killed someone," he said. "And I need to tell you how and why." The studio seemed to grow colder as I listened. The caller's voice was calm, almost detached, as he began to recount his story. "It started 6 months ago," he said. I met her at a bar downtown. She was beautiful, carefree, and I was instantly drawn to her. We talked for hours, and I felt a connection I hadn't felt in years. He paused, as if remembering the details. Her name was Lisa. She laughed at my jokes, and her smile was infectious. I knew I had to see her again. We exchanged numbers, and over the next few weeks, we became inseparable. My throat felt dry as I listened. This was more than a simple confession. It was a story of obsession. Lisa had a boyfriend, the caller continued. I didn't care. I wanted her, and I would do anything to have her. I followed her, learned her routines, her likes and dislikes. I became a part of her life without her even realizing it. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. This wasn't just a story about infidelity, it was something far more sinister. One night, I followed her home, he said, his voice growing softer. I watched as she argued with her boyfriend. They fought, and he left. It was my chance. I knocked on her door, pretending to be concerned. She let me in, grateful for the company. He paused again, and I could hear his breathing, slow and steady. We talked for hours, and then she kissed me. It was everything I had dreamed of, but I knew it couldn't last. She would never be mine as long as he was in the picture. I swallowed hard, dreading what was coming next. I waited until she fell asleep, he said. Then I went to the kitchen and found a knife. I stood over her, watching her sleep, and I knew what I had to do. I couldn't let her go back to him. My heart raced as the caller described the murder in chilling detail, the way he had plunged the knife into Lisa's chest, the look of shock and betrayal in her eyes as she woke to the pain. I cleaned up as best as I could, he said. I made it look like a robbery gone wrong. The police spotted it. They never suspected me. I was shaking, my hands clammy as I gripped the edge of the desk. This was no ordinary confession. It was a declaration of guilt, a chilling recounting of a premeditated murder. Why are you telling me this? I managed to ask, my voice barely more than a whisper. Because I need someone to know, the caller replied. I need someone to understand why I did it. Why? I asked again, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. Why did you do it? Because I loved her, he said simply. And I couldn't bear the thought of losing her. The line went dead, leaving me in stunned silence. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, the weight of his confession pressing down on me. The next morning, I went to the police with the recording of the call. They listened intently, their faces growing grimmer by the minute. This is serious, Detective Miller said, his eyes fixed on mine. We need to trace this call. They managed to trace the call to a payphone downtown, but it was a dead end.
No fingerprints, no witnesses.
The caller had covered his tracks well. Days turned into weeks, and the police made little progress. The story of the confession spread, turning my show into a sensation. People tuned in every night, hoping to hear more from the mysterious caller. But he never called again. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that hung over me. I started seeing a therapist, trying to cope with the nightmares that plagued my sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lisa's face, her eyes wide with terror as the knife plunged into her chest. One night, as I was leaving the studio, I noticed a figure standing in the shadows. My heart leapt into my throat, but when I called out, no one answered. I hurried to my car, locking the doors and driving home with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Weeks later, I received another email from the same anonymous sender. My hands shook as I opened it, the subject line simply reading, "Thank you." The body of the email was short but chilling. "Thank you for listening." I needed to get it off my chest. But don't worry, DJ. There are more stories to tell. I forwarded the email to the police, but there was little they could do. The address was untraceable, and the sender remained a ghost. Life slowly returned to some semblance of normalcy, but I was forever changed. I couldn't walk down the street without looking over my shoulder, couldn't sit in a room without scanning for exits. The fear that had gripped me since that night never truly left. Months later, I received a call during my show. The voice was different, but the tone was the same, calm, detached, and terrifying. "Hello, DJ," the caller said. "I have another confession to make." My blood ran cold as I realized the nightmare wasn't over. The darkness that had once been my friend had become my greatest fear, a shadow that followed me wherever I went.